this system that I'm going over today is based off of a script from scratch. I have a screenwriting workbook called Script from Scratch, and we're going to be using that to sort of develop our screenplays today. I like to think of it, and you'll see me do this a lot, where I'll look like I'm combing through an imaginary ponytail. That's basically what the process is like. Any of you know what a kitchen is? That's what we're going to be combing through, the kitchen of your screenplay. If you don't know what a kitchen is, it is that part of the nape of your neck where your hair gets tangled. And of course, a lot of our screenplays can do that. So we're going to comb through that. I am an educator first and foremost. So as much as possible, the whole point is just to give you a system to use, almost a funnel to put your ideas through. So a script comes out the other side. And I do believe that it eliminates writer's block simply just because you get to turn off that part of your brain where all the fear and anxiety lives and where all the trauma tells you, I can't really talk about this right now. So that you can talk about it right now and put it in your screenplay and win awards. So I am a firm believer in the outline, and I do know that everybody is not an outline screenwriter. I have my own opinions as to why, and I know we're different types of writers. I myself am what I call a crock pot screenwriter, meaning that I have to put a script in a crock pot. I'm not someone who has a system where I write every single day. I like to binge write, and I know that we all have different schedules by which we write. But in terms of preparation and systems, I do believe that almost everybody, there's probably some outliers, so almost everybody should be doing outline. So this system is based on outlining, and it is based on the traditional 3-act structure. So I'm not a firm believer that every script should follow this structure. I don't even believe that it's necessarily the standard, but I do believe it was built off of how human beings absorb narrative in a compelling way. And so, as opposed to just running in the other direction, we are going to start here and then you will blossom your scripts or your stories from there. This is interactive, so I will be asking questions. You are able to just sort of jump in and say, hey, I don't understand that, doesn't make sense, or that makes total sense, except I hate it. Whatever you need to say to jump in to clarify something, this is the space to do it. And then we will be taking a few minutes for you to actually write some things and come back and share. So it's kind of like a virtual classroom, except I can't reach out and touch you or throw an eraser at your head. And I did want to say one thing. I think, was it Leticia? I know that you're writing a pilot. This structure is specifically for features, even though there's a version of this you can use for pilots, but I wouldn't put a pilot in and expect a pilot to come out the other end. But we can talk a little bit about how to modify it specifically for a television structure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start off with a story statement. This is not a brand new concept, and I actually learned this from a documentary filmmaker. And for those who do docs, you know, documentary filmmaking is one of the most challenging things you can do because you're not in control of any of the materials. So once you learn how to tell a nonfiction story well, telling a fiction story is kind of like slicing through butter. Which is why this tool works so well for telling stories. I'm going to read it to you, explain the elements of it, and then we're going to put whatever story you're working on in here. And I know we're all sort of at different places. I finished my feature. I'm 7 drafts in, or I'm just starting, or I just have an idea and I haven't started yet. All of these are things we want to put into the story statement. So we're taking wherever you are on your screenplay right now and putting it in the freezer. It's not dying, it's not disappearing, it's just going in the freezer for now. And we're going to use another side of our brain to work with it. And then if what's in the freezer is better or makes more sense, we'll take it out and defrost it. Or if not, we'll use this to sort of be a standard for what this could be over here. So this is a story statement. I do believe it's the most powerful tool in feature writing, and we're going to go over why in just a second. It reads like this. This is the story of blank, your main character. I have character here, but it's usually your main character who wants blank, tangible want. That's where we're going to put our tangible want. Will character, their name, Mary, Sally, Bob, whoever, be successful, or will their internal obstacle prove too difficult? Now, when we talk about characters, most characters in movies, most main characters in movies are people, human beings. Mary, Bob, Sally, Hannah, but not always. Sometimes a character is a city, sometimes a character is a movement, sometimes a character is an idea. Those are a little harder to like wrestle down, right? And figure out how to structure them. But a character doesn't have to be a person. We see this most of the time when a character is a group of people, right? So a character can be a basketball team. A basketball team wants to win a championship, or a movement. A movement wants issue justice on a specific case, right? So it doesn't have to be a singular human being if you're dealing with a group. This is a story of the Johnson family who wants to bury their grandmother. It can be sort of as small as the family, as big as an entire movement. But for the most part, our main characters are people, singular people. This is the story of whoever who wants to do this tangible thing. This doesn't work if it's not a tangible want, right? I want to win the spelling bee. I want to kill my brother's murderer. I want to get a promotion at work. It has to be tangible, something I can see. So something internal, like I want to have high self-esteem, or I want to forgive myself. All of these things happen inside of the character. And because this sentence, this question is the question that almost every story in the world asks, not every story, but almost every story asks, and film is an inherently visual art form, then in order to answer the question, did they or didn't they? Then we have to be able to see if they did or didn't. And we're not able to see that if it's not tangible. So we will get to what's happening internal inside of your character, but this isn't the place for it. So it has to be a tangible one, and it can be big or small. So something big would be like, this is the story of Sam who wants to win the president of the United States. Let's hope Sam wins because we're struggling. Will Sam be successful? Or will, and the internal obstacle is what Sam is up against. Sometimes traditionally we learn that our obstacle is out there in the world, right? So your alcoholic grandmother, or your mean teacher, or your abusive father, or whatever the big bad wolf is out there that's stopping your character. It could be the comet coming from Earth. This is a story of Bill, who wants to save the world from the comet. Will Bill be successful, or will the internal obstacle is the thing that's inside of Bill? Bill is not up against the comet that's coming for the earth that's about to kill everybody. That's maybe what he wants to do, but like in real life, what most characters are up against is themselves. And I think those end up being more compelling stories. The big bad wolf, the alcoholic grandmother, let's say, is what your character is up against in the plot, but not the story, right? So your story statement is telling you what the story is really about underneath it all. And the plot is kind of like the icing on top. It's let's say if your story was a roller coaster, the story would be the stilts that are like holding the roller coaster together. And then the plot would be what's riding that story. We're able to see what the story is by way of the plot, through the plot. The plot is not the story, it's just what's happening. It's happening because of the story. The story is happening because something is going on the inside of that character that they need to overcome in order to get the thing that they want. And the thing that they want out there in the world may be to save people from the comet coming from Earth. It may be to finally confront the alcoholic grandmother But that's not the story. So the internal obstacle, and usually one of the more challenging things for your story statement is going to be what the character is dealing with internally. Um, just like in real life, just like with real people. So an example would be, this is a story of Hannah who wants to win her high school spelling bee. Will Hannah be successful, or will her speech impediment prove too difficult? So here's the relationship between the tangible want and the internal obstacle. Because the name Sarah, Hannah, Bob, whoever is pretty easy. It's whoever you named your character to be. But the relationship between this tangible want and your internal obstacle, that's the tension that provides that sort of compelling conflict that you want in the story. And I have two main rules for that. One, they have to be equal adversaries. So if Hannah wants to win the spelling bee, it's sort of up here, and especially as a high school student, very important. And her speech impediment is the thing that can knock that out the way. If Hannah wanted to win the spelling bee, but the internal obstacle was something like, her bad wardrobe. Well, that's not only an easy fix, but it's not really a match, right, for what the stakes of winning the spelling bee can be. We want it to be a formidable opponent, but they also have to be inextricably linked to each other, right? So we wouldn't want her want to be winning the spelling bee and then her internal obstacle to be something like um her eating disorder. Now, eating disorders are very challenging problems, but they have nothing to do with winning a spelling bee. And so I'm not going to be able to see scene after scene where she moves one step forward and two steps back because of the specific thing that's up against the spelling bee. I need the thing that's up against the spelling bee to be something that can fight the specific spelling bee, and a speech impediment if you're trying to win a spelling bee. These two things have a relationship. They have a close relationship. So we're going to take some time putting the stories that you're working on through a story statement and get a sense of what they feel like. My strong feeling for a story statement is that it's something you want to do over and over again. So in the workbook, I mean, I have maybe 2 pages of just story statements because, well, you rarely get it right the first time. How do you know it's right? You know it's right. This is very intangible and not very technical, but you know it's right when you have that feeling. And this is, this is screenwriting 101. Very, very important. You get a feeling right here in your side, and it kind of makes you do that sucking sound through your teeth. That's how you know your story statement is there. So you do it over and over and over and over again. Now, you're probably not going to switch out the names, but you're going to switch out that want and especially that internal obstacle over and over and over and over again until they have the relationship with each other that you want, and that they are equal opponents, and that the question feels nearly impossible. So how is a girl with a severe speech impediment going to win a spelling bee? I have no idea. And now I have to watch the movie to figure out how the hell she does that. That's what you want people to feel. I mean, this is mostly going to be private in your own work, sitting at your kitchen table, but that's what you want the feeling to be once you're finished with your story statement. You want it to feel like, well, how the hell are they going to do that? This is a story of Bill who wants to get a promotion in his job. Will Bill be successful, or will his sexual addiction to his boss prove too difficult? I don't know how he's going to get a promotion knowing this secret or his addiction problems. This is a story of Mary who wants to take over her father's ice cream business. Will she be successful, or will her gambling problem be too difficult? Well, I don't know how she's going to run the business. She has a gambling problem. She loses all the money. So it needs to be nearly impossible And that's where we are. So these are ingredients that you probably already have for your story. Those of you who are done or a few drafts in, we're just gonna try it out and see where we end up. We don't have a ton of time. I'm just gonna give you about a minute just to try it out, and then we'll share a few. I'm looking for who looks ready. It's giving me eye contact. Matthew, is that a look of readiness?
Yeah, I've been like just practicing some of them. Kind of
All
switch up
right.
the wording if that's all right.
As much as possible, try to get as closely as possible.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and whichever one makes you feel the least comfortable is the right one.
All right, sure. So this is like a documentary I've been working on. Story of Bob Pulford, who just wants to watch the sunset, watch the sunset on his life. Will Bob be successful, or will dementia make him lose sight of the sun?
What does sunset look like for him?
Um, like just kind of like the ending of his life.
Okay. What would that look like? If I saw it on camera, what would it look like?
Just him sitting down, having a cocktail while he watches like the sunset over a lake.
The literal sunset.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So this is the story of your main character who wants to watch. What is he up against? To dementia?
yeah, dementia.
And
Like just kind
dementia.
of forgetting his life.
Okay. Um, I wonder if there is a more tangible one. Because dementia is the one of the best internal obstacles you can have. He doesn't have any control over it. It's happening, it's internal. Uh,
Hmm.
we can see evidence of it, but we can't see it. The thing that he wants, though, is I think you may want something more concrete because
Okay.
yeah, because if we have something like they want to enjoy the rest of their life or they want to experience, joy with their family one more time or something like that, then it puts you in a position where you may be shooting for a long time trying to figure out, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? But if you give me something like this person wants to attend their family reunion or this person wants to walk their daughter down the aisle or something like that, then I know it when I see it. And then you can
So
articulate
would something like remember his like family stories be tangible?
that. If you gave me something like,
I think I have something for his. So something along
yeah,
the lines of Bob wants to give a speech on his family history, but will his dementia be too difficult? Is that something along the
that
lines?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes in a documentary, you have to contrive that kind of thing, both fortunately and unfortunately. But it gives you a lot of power as a storyteller. Anybody
Cool,
else?
cool, cool.
So I think I have one just based off this. This isn't like my feature film, but just based off the exercise. But Bob wants to win a speed reading competition. Will Bob be successful, or will his dyslexia prove too difficult?
Boom. Perfect. Yes. That's it. Anybody else before we move on? When it comes to the things that we're writing, not every time, but sometimes what our internal obstacle is for our character is our internal obstacle for ourselves. That's why we're writing it. So if we're trying to figure out which one it is, there's petals that open to a deeper level and a deeper level and a deeper level, right? So sometimes if it's their depression, then we may open their depression up and then find out what's underneath there and keep going until we feel really exposed, and then that's the right one. So if you finish your internal your story statement, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be seen, then you've gotten to a really good place. So after you're done with your story statement, it's really a standard to hold your outline to, right? That the outline obeys the story statement, not the story statement obeying the outline. So once you're done, then you sort of put it somewhere physical in your room where you can see it, not your computer, usually where you're also writing and you have to go through different windows to find it again, but up against the place where while you're writing, you can be like, is this a story I'm telling? Oh, that's not, I've gotten away from the story I'm telling. And then the next thing you're gonna wanna do is a simple outline. I love the short, simple outline. It is the skeleton of your screenplay. I'm going to go through it really quickly. Most of you have an idea of what all of these things are and probably use this to structure your screenplay. This is based on a basic 3-act structure. Of course, you can go outside of that, but this is the base of what I like to use. So we have at the beginning your status quo. That's the state of your main character's world before everything changes. I like to call it comfortable dysfunction. Comfortable dysfunction does not mean it has to be a sad, terrible, awful story. It just means that your character is not prepared for what is to come. So it could be comfortable dysfunction. I'm living a blissful, happy life, and the inciting incident is about to prove my worldview wrong because I didn't realize this could, go this way, or the other way around. Your inciting incident is the event that shifts that status quo. Most of us know what that is. Next is your point of return. That is the beginning of your second act. So it's a decision that has been made that sets the story on its way and we can't go back. I like to think of it as like, if somebody's father passed away and they have to move back to the hometown, the point of no return is them literally getting in the car, driving, down the turnpike or wherever. That's the point of no return. We can't go back. The world is different now because of the inciting incident. And that's the beginning of the second act. After that, we have your climax. That's the event where an unchanged character gets what they think they want. I think when I was first taught this, I was taught the climax was the most dramatic part of the movie, but I do not teach it that way, and I don't think that's it. I think after your point of no return, you have an unchanged character, where things are seemingly going well. So if this is a boy meets girl, right? This is boy meets girl. And that's your inciting incident. Boy is living a comfortable dysfunction. Boy meets girl. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. I want to date this girl. The point of no return, of course, is the first time you ask the girl out or engage. But the climax is the first time she says, yes, I'll go on a date, with you. Or when the date goes really well, the first time they make love, whatever he's after, he's getting there. And there hasn't been any change in his character yet. That's your climax. And then we have what I call a trigger. It's an event that signaling the deeper change hasn't occurred and failure is coming. So it's this tiny, 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 like little chink in the armor. That would be, let's say, if boy is an alcoholic and boy meets girl and girl says, yes, I'll go on a date with you and everything is going fine. The trigger would be the time that she finds like a tiny little alcohol bottle in his car. And she's like, why does he have all these little tiny bottles? And then we go back to our regularly scheduled program. It's a tiny thing where the audience knows, uh-oh, okay, maybe this isn't going to go the way he wants it to go. But then, it shouldn't cause attention to itself. And then we have our lowest point where an unchanged character has lost it all. And that's the end of the second act. Now, mind you, there's a bunch of things that need to happen between the trigger and the lowest point. So the trigger and the lowest point, these are like magnets, right? And they're all, this is the downfall. So this is the beginning of the end, and then the lowest point would be the end. And of course, our third act starts with lasting change. That's the event that signifies the main character has finally changed for good. So this is when boy loses girl at the lowest point, but boy also loses job and the respect of his parents or whatever. Lowest point shouldn't just be one thing. It should feel like a pile of bricks because of all the wonderful things that you've put between the trigger and the lowest point. And then we have lasting change, the beginning of the third act, that is boy going to rehab or something like that. And the conclusion is the reward for lasting change, which means he does some gesture, which makes everything fine. And he gets girl back, or maybe he does a big gesture and girl is like, I no. And he doesn't. Whatever it is, it's the reward for lasting change. And sometimes the reward from lasting change is exactly what the main character wanted. And sometimes it's not. And that's up to you as the writer to decide what kind of story you want to tell. Sometimes there is a post-conclusion conclusion. So most times there's just one beat where it's like, that's the end of the movie. But not all the time. Sometimes we test our main character to make sure that the lasting change really is lasting. So you want to think something like a Finding Nemo, where dad finally gets his, fish son back and has overcome his fear. That was the change that needed to happen, right? The ability to let go. And then it's tested. His son has the ability to save someone, and dad is tested. Has he really let go of that fear? Is he able to allow his son to grow and be himself? And he is. So that is our post-conclusion conclusion, but when it's done well, it's very satisfying. So that is what, let's say if you're going through script from scratch, that would be the first week, the work of sort of getting to a place where you've done your development, you know who your character is, you've done the backstory, all of that, you've come up with the outline, and now you have the bare bones of your screenplay, and it looks like this. I'm just gonna put this in blue. So it's small. So you think of your screenplay upwards of 100 pages, your whole movie is right here. And this is why going through a system like this eliminates writer's block, because it's like, here we go with the hair. If you start trying to comb your hair from here, you're gonna get tangled, right? But if you start from the bottom and work your way up, you eliminate the tangles as you go. That's what this outline is. It's you comparing your simple outline to your to the story. You said this is a story you're telling. You did your story statement 12 times. You came to the conclusion of this beautiful, complicated story in your story statement. You compare it, look at your outline. Is this story telling this story? Yes. Okay. Now we have the entire screenplay in like 7 lines. Then you'll move on to week 2, and that's just the connective tissue. And that's when you add your events. So sometimes events can get convoluted with scenes, but events are these big, chunky plot points that hold your story together like a skeleton. And then the scenes are the more visual and emotional map in between. So in this week, in week 2, you won't be delving heavily into the emotional map. But you're going to be looking at these big, chunky scenes. So you have your status quo. You already know what it is. It's already in your outline. And then you're going to blossom your outline, right? So you're not going to go top down narrative-wise like you would from your hair. You're going to expand it. So what are all the things, not scenes, just big, chunky events that need to happen between your status quo and your inciting incident? Okay, so let's say this is a character who wants to get promotion at their job. They are unhappy in their position. That's their status quo. They're not going to quit, but they're unhappy. That's their comfortable dysfunction. Inciting incident is they get fired. Well, you can't get promoted at a company you don't work at, right? So what are all the things that need to happen between I hate my job in this position and me getting fired? Maybe we see them wake up in the morning and their boss calls them even though they're not in work yet. Maybe they go and have a conversation with the bagel girl that they have a crush on, and she's like, just hang in there. There are a few things that need to happen. You're going to put them here. You're not going to give me scenes. You're not going to give me dialogue. Are you going to give me our sentences? Bagel girl, she says, hang in there. Boss calls on the cell phone. The phone goes out because he's on the train. Whatever those big scenes are, you're going to put them in between each one. So you have a few between the status quo and the inciting incident. You have a few between the inciting incident and the point of return. And you have them between the point of no return and the climax. So just so you understand kind of what it's going to look like, there's very few things between the status quo and the inciting incident, right? Your first act is not going to be that long. There's very few between the point of no return and the inciting incident. Point of no return and climax, very few. By the time we get down to our climax and trigger, you're going to have a lot more events. Between your trigger and lowest point, you're going to have a few, because for lasting change needs to happen, there has to be some realization on the part of your character. Usually between the lowest point and the lasting change is not a ton. There is some change, but because your character is at rock bottom, it's not a lot much further for them to go, at least to inch themselves back up to being like, all right, I'll go to rehab. Or all right, I'll stop cheating on my husband. And then between lasting and change and conclusion, it's not very much time to wrap it up. And then possibly there's a post-conclusion conclusion. So all of that is probably what you're going to end up doing if you go through the process in week 2. But this can take a while just because there's some thoughtfulness to go through here. If we're trying not to get our hair tangled and we're trying to make sure that we're blossoming our outline to the point where it turns into a screenplay, then even though, I mean, these are 7 sentences compared to, 100 pages of writing. So it may seem like I can breeze through this, but this is just a concentrated version of your story. So you want to be really thoughtful about the events that happen in what I would call your medium outline. And then we blossom the outline even further. And this is where we're going to go into actual scenes. So you're going to blossom it what I call blossom part 2, which is you're going to now take your outline and all of the ways that you blossomed it, so all the events that happened in between, and you're going to go ahead and put them in acts, your first act, your second act, your third act, separate them out. And now I want you to put them in screenwriting format. So you're going to go to all of your scenes. So let's say you're here in your outline. Your status quo, you're going to make this a scene. What's the first scene in your screenplay? And that you're just going to go into whatever screenwriting software you have. And then you're going to go interior, Billy's apartment, day, him getting up and, getting ready for the morning. And then his cell phone rings and it's his boss calling him at home, even though he's already talked to HR about that. And then whatever that next big chunk of scene is, you just give me a scene, you put it in screenwriting format and tell me what's happening in that scene. We're not adding dialogue. We're literally just changing the format so that we know where we are, what time of day, and what happens in that scene. So you're just blossoming your medium outline into screenwriting format. And then I want you to take that and I want you to blossom all of those events into scenes. So if this is the last place where you were and you've made all of these, you put them all into screenwriting format, then you're going to go into each of these events and blossom these events into scenes. So let's say if the first event is, I have this character, his name is Harry, he hates his job. And the first event is him waking up in the morning and getting a call from his boss. We have Harry in his bedroom, waking up, stubbing his toe. That's the first scene. The next scene, Harry in the kitchen, making coffee in his boxer shorts. And that's where he gets the phone call, not in the bedroom. The next scene is exterior, Harry rushing out the door and going to the bagel shop next door. And that's where he has the conversation with the girl that he has a crush on, who tells him to hang in there. And then the next scene is not even on the train, because Harry gets another phone call on the way to the train. So all of the scenes, the scenes that make up the event, you're blossoming them even further into the smaller detail. And because you're now in your screenwriting software, then it's your entire screenplay with these little mini scenes. No dialogue yet, no detail. You're not giving me scene descriptions, but I do have all of the scenes in the script, because you've written your entire script, you've blossomed your events into scenes, and now every scene in the movie is in your screenplay. And then your final step is going to be going into these scenes and fleshing them out. So this is like the more fun, sexy work I always call outlining the vegetables of screenwriting, just because it's less of the razzle dazzle, less of the thrill you get when you're writing. You know, the part that you like writing is figuring out the tone of the scene and what's the scenery and what did such and such say to his mother to finally confront her about what she did a long time ago. That's the juicy part. Now we're in the ice cream and cake. You've done the meat and potatoes, you've graduated. And once you've fleshed out all of your scenes, you're done with your first draft. And you haven't had to stop and really brainstorm about what's next, because you've decided what's next a really long time ago. And then the last step is to move to your next draft. So after you've gone through this process, you keep writing. You actually write your script. You don't have a great idea and write it outline and then put it down. Or tell everybody, oh, I'm writing a screenplay, I'm in the middle of it. You continue writing until it's ready. And the best way to know it's ready, in my personal opinion, even though I'm sure most of you that I talk to are already working in the industry and you have colleagues and friends or story consultants or whoever to send it to. But it's more self-curation. You having the ability to curate your own work is one of the most powerful things you can do. Knowing what's good and knowing why it's good is a very powerful microscope to be able to put on your own work and on the work of people in your community. Once you have that power, I suggest that you share it and be friends to the people around you. We do very much need each other, and the writers in your life need your help as much as you need theirs. So,
Spade, first of all, thank you. That was impressive. It was very thorough, and you obviously know your stuff.
thank you.
I guess I'm wondering, writing has never been the difficult part for me. Uh, how do I know if what I wrote is actually good? I mean, is it just through feedback from peers, or how do you gauge that?
So yes, you should also get eyeballs on your work, absolutely. But I do think it's like an eyeball sandwich. Oh, that sounds gross. It's you know it's ready to send off for feedback because you self-curated it, and you know when you're ready to stop getting notes and send it out to wherever you're sending it to, whether that's like your manager, whoever, because of self-curation too. This really comes from two main things. I think the first thing is knowing what you like but like in granular detail, right? You have your own taste, you know what you like to consume. The more you consume work that you love, that you believe is operating at a high level, and the more you have conversations with other people about why it's good, that really sharpens that skill set. So you can use language to figure out what's happening with your own screenplay. So let's say there's a movie that you love, you've watched it a million times, and everything in that genre you've watched, right? Then go back and investigate why in a few categories. So you would investigate why in the category of character development being, in my opinion, first. I would say next would be like structure. So like how compelling is it based on the emotional journey I go through? Meaning like in the first act, I'm committed to going on the journey with this character because I care about them already and I don't know why. There's so much tension in the second act, I can't look away. I feel devastated for the character at the bottom of the second act, and I feel satisfying at the end. And usually that end, you want to be, if you can, a really good combination of completely surprising and totally inevitable. If you can get those two together, I think you're winning, right? It's difficult to do, but I think you want that marriage if you can get it. So that's the structure. So character development, structure. You want to go through some world development and relationship development, and then dialogue development. And if your script is operating at a high level on all those things, then I think you'll feel why it's working. But those are the questions you want to ask yourself when you're self-curating both at the beginning and the end. And ask yourself that about movies that you love too. Sometimes we love movies that aren't operating on all of those cylinders. So then you ask yourself why. Like, if this movie is not great in world building, like the rules of the world are muddy, it sort of broke its own rule in the second act, but I still love it. Why? It's because every conversation sounds like a conversation I've had. It's so, these relationships are just so well written. Then you understand what kind of microscope to put on your own work so that it can cover maybe a multitude of sins. Does that make sense? Was that just a lot of words, or did that?
No, that helps. Thank you very much.
Uh, Laura Jean's asking, would you say the internal conflict is the same as the character flaw?
No, I would say an internal conflict is just what your character is up against internally. So it can be a lack of self-worth. It could be something that they don't have any control over, like a trauma. Or it could be, a huge character flaw. But I would say I try to avoid things like character flaws when I talk about my characters. I just try to think of them um, not as people who don't have flaws, but more like, how is this human being put together? I think when we start to cast judgment on our characters, it's harder to write them. I can't tell you how many times I've told people that their second act isn't working because they haven't forgiven their mother. You can't write someone well that you haven't figured out how to understand them. And if you haven't forgiven someone, or you sort of see them as a bad person, then it's difficult to understand them, and then they're therefore difficult to write them.
Terry had asked at the beginning of this about AI and using AI to brainstorm ideas. And I kind of wanted to bring that as a group conversation because obviously AI, when it comes to our artistic works, is bad because it's whatever we are putting in is also feeding it. And we're being fed off other people's work. So what is everybody's thought on using it as I use it all the time as like my doctor and like, business ideas. But what do you guys feel about that as far as using it to like help you brainstorm stuff for your features. Does anybody have thoughts? Go for it, Marlon.
I think it's cheating. My personal opinion. I just feel that a technique that I've learned is if I put a blank sheet of paper in front of me and set a timer for 10 minutes, and then when that timer goes off, I look at what I wrote or what I did not write, then I reset that timer. I don't know. I don't feel right with AI helping me be creative. I think it comes from within, and is that's just my opinion on it. I'm not a fan of it. So I think if you have it and you really want to be creative and it's inside you, somehow, some way you can pull it out to make things happen.
I use it a lot for grammar and to help me choose words. But I think, like Marlon said, for ideas, it's pretty lame. It's like that's all you got, really. I just feel like I can do better. And when I read other people's work compared to what AI wrote or would have written, I feel like people are still more interesting. And I wouldn't discount AI completely yet. Maybe it can start helping more and more as time progresses. But right now, I still don't think it really understands conflict and eye-catching plot points and such. It,
I will say I have played with it with short synopsis and log lines to be like, can you make this stronger? And it's been fantastic. But that's already my idea that I'm putting in there. Now, of course, now I'm putting my idea into the universe of AI, and other people will now have that. But I think that happens anyway, subconsciously. We have this creative thing where like we think of it, and that's why someone else is making it when they, 'cause, you know, the studio has the money we don't have. And Terry, I don't know if you want to speak up on any thoughts on like where you what maybe you thought might be helpful with AI. I know we're just having a discussion and you were just curious, but
Yeah, well, I agree that I have reservations about creative, create, create, I'm sorry, creatively. Just coming up with the ideas, the plot lines. I think that human develop, our own plot lines based on either other people's life stories or something we've imagined, and intertwining the two is infinitely more interesting than what I've seen any AI generator come up with. And so I definitely share that sentiment, but I too have used it for just checking my synopsis or an outline. If this seems plausible, has it ever come up with anything really better, um, different, but not better. I do agree that it does kind of lack that human element. It seems too formulaic. I have to agree with that, but it has kind of got me off a tough point or a time or two and helped me open the door my own thinking about how, well, okay, I never thought about this aspect of the character. That's interesting. I follow that. Sometimes I don't use that. Oftentimes I don't, but
I think
it's
that's why
something.
Kristen wants a good writing partner for
Yeah.
that same
So,
reason.
yes. Good point. Exactly right.
If AI was a good writing partner, I wouldn't be looking. Right. But I think the audiences really are going to increasingly crave the human connection we can bring through storytelling, like we're around a fire to put together, and AI is going to take us in the complete opposite direction. But it's great for things like, you know, a two-line, log line, a elevator pitch, or like a thesaurus or a spell check. But as far as putting a whole screenplay in there, I would not really want that out there in the generative and then see the someone made it with their little, you know, software plug-in and totally cheapened the idea because they made it such a crappy version of what I would have done, but they beat me to it. So I don't
Mm.
trust it, but even more importantly, I crave the human realness, the spirituality that AI will never have, even if it reads everybody's private thoughts.
We have 2 minutes, and I see Miles has a great counter argument, and Gabriel has his hand up. So, Gabriel, go for it really quick.
Yeah, I just want I don't use AI, but I do think that there is some value in hearing bad ideas from it creatively, because for me, sometimes hearing like a bad creative idea kind of like unlocks the right idea in my mind. So I do think it can be useful as a tool in that regard, but to actually use that uh what it's giving you creatively, I think it's not good for that. Yeah.
Parker says, what helps me is having to outline the movies that I'm using as a cross section for my own idea. That might be over some expansion, but I want to hear Miles, because he says he loves AI and he has a counter argument. Go for it.
I was just gonna say I'm a lot like you. I use AI for everything. So I even used it to diagnose my dog the other day, like uploading pictures to it to see if I needed to take it to the vet. And it was like, oh, you can wait 3 days.
Yep.
But I actually do use AI as a writing team. So I'll put my ideas in the AI and it can help you flesh it out. The problem with AI is very limited mentally and it writes on the nose a lot of times. But you and I have used AI to just generate, like the other guy was saying, random ideas. And then I've also wrote a whole script through AI where AI can't tell you the experiences. So it was a golf script, but I have all the golf experience. So I had to put what I wanted in the general ideas and I had to form it. AI just can't write you a script. What AI can do is take your thoughts and your ideas and it can help you organize them and it can also help you expand on them. But when you see the final product, you're right. There definitely has to be a lot of human touch to it in a sense. But it was just the counter argument to the other people because I love AI and I'm a big fan.
I love it. We are out of time. Spade, I'd love any final thoughts from you, whether it's on this whole AI dilemma or just screenwriting in general.
Okay, so real quick, on AI, I'll ask the question that I asked my students this semester, which was, what are you winning and what are you losing? I think it's important for us to look at that, not to judge where the future is going, because so much of it we don't have control over. More to ask yourself as you continue to use the tools, like what am I really gaining? And there could be great things that have been mentioned on this call, but then also what am I losing, and use that to temper how you're using it. Because remember, I don't know, I'm old, but in school they used to try to tell us not to use calculators. We used to sneak and use them.
Right.
But when I'm in the grocery store, the fact that I can like add all these prices because in my head is because I wasn't using a calculator. And I think film is such a collaborative art form that so much of what you're creating, you're going to have to communicate that to department heads. You're going to have to communicate that to a cinematographer, not just what you're shooting, but so much about what the scene means. And so I would just say that remember that you want to continue to exercise these storytelling muscles, because down the line, they do come back up again.
Thank you.
In general, just not on AI. I just want to encourage everybody, because I know there's so much bleak conversation about the industry and the work that we love. I do believe that there is a silver lining, not silver lining. There's a encouraging time coming for us. And I do not want any of your voices to drop out of this field due to discouragement, because we need them. Stories that you tell create the culture of the world that we're living in, and we can't afford to lose any of you.